This year, you want to learn a language, and you want to learn a language that gives you the most aura. I already made a tier list about which language will get you the most riz, so ranking languages based off of how beautiful they are. This will just be a tier list based off of the language choice itself. Before we get into it, I would like to say that this video is sponsored by my hate for monolinguals. Okay, we're going to start the tier list with Romance languages. I'm going to start with Spanish, and it's pretty obvious where Spanish will go. You're either learning Spanish because you live in California and your friends, co-workers, and parents speak the language except you. Or you're studying Spanish in school, but when you try to actually speak Spanish, you realize that you keep saying me llamo es instead of me llamo, and you keep saying me hablo instead of yo hablo. So, yeah. And also, you still can't pronounce your R's, but let's admit it, I can't either. So, of course, yeah, Spanish is a basic choice, but hey, for all of those who actually do it this year and who aren't doing it for the fourth time and know that they are going to fail, then I salute you. And if you are one of those people who keeps trying to get into Spanish, but you just can't get it done, well, I have multiple videos on how to learn a language and keep consistency. Okay, the next Romance language is Italian. And I know that a lot of you think that you're quirky or cool for learning Italian, but no. I mean, yes, Italian's cool, but we all know that Italian is actually easy, even if you were to tell someone and they would be pretty amazed by that. No, it's a pretty basic choice, and it has a lot of resources. I mean, it's a good language to learn, but I do see it kind of the same way as Spanish, just except that you just don't have a ton of people to talk to if you're living in America. But if you're living in Europe, oh, you are fine, especially if you are living on the border of Italy. Okay, next up we're going to talk about French. I think that although French is widespread in America when it comes to teaching the language, and it's very widespread language, I wouldn't say it's a basic choice because French is, besides Romanian, of course, the hardest major Romance language to learn, in my opinion, because of a lot of goofy phonetic and grammar rules. But I think that if you're able to really dive into this language and keep it consistent, and especially if you're able to, actually pronounce it at least half decently, then you are not a detriment to society. So I would like to put French in the cool tier. Next Romance language is Portuguese. And if you are learning Portuguese, then I hate you. Cringe. Now, if you are learning Brazilian, oh my gosh. Brazilian is one of the best languages of all time, spoken in a country that literally bulked. If you're learning Brazilian, you don't care just about trying to be a freaking, polyglot. You actually care about culture, connecting with people, or you do care about being a polyglot and you learn Spanish and you're leveraging your Spanish to learn Portuguese. There is a lot of nuances to it, and that it's just fun to speak, fun to interact with people, and you get W at food and scenery and culture, of course. So if you're learning Brazilian, I would say that you are enlightened, especially because compared to the other Romance languages, even though Brazilian is in the top 5 most spoken languages in the entire world, everybody will learn Spanish, French, and Italian before they even decide to choose Portuguese. Okay, I think that's every Romance language. Yeah, I don't think I forgot any. I will include Romanian as a Romance language, not as a Slavic language. I do believe, of course, that it has elements of both, but as a language, it is more of a Romance language because it descended from Latin. And I would like to say that Romanian is closer to Latin in many regards compared to Italian. I know a lot of Italian MFs like to say, oh no, we have closer vocabulary. Have you heard of the Ecclesiastical pronunciation? You made that up. I mean, yes, it's real, but the restored it's meant to be close to Italian. People have literally learned the classical pronunciation and have gone to Italy and they can't understand. Stop lying to yourself. Yes, the vocabulary is similar, but when it comes to grammar, tense complexity, cases, yeah, Romanian takes the cake. And somehow it's in category 1 for languages to learn. If you're an English speaker, and category 1 being the easiest languages to learn, it's like category 6. I don't know what you're talking about. So if you're learning Romanian, you recognize that Romanian is not a language from Rome, and you realize that Romanian actually is an aura-filled language, and the culture, while goofy, is really cool. So if you, yes you, are learning Romanian, you are officially him. Okay, I would like to move on to the Germanic languages now. And of course, we're going to start with the biggest Germanic language that exists out there, Dutch. Chances are that if you are learning Dutch, a lot of people who aren't really into the language learning sphere will probably be like, oh, Dutch, that sounds so hard. But we all know that, yes, Dutch is hard. A lot of you probably think that Dutch is easy. And yes, compared to other languages, of course, Dutch is easy. But a lot of people want to learn Dutch because they see that it's close to English. But then they realize that Dutch actually has really goofy grammar, really goofy to pronounce. And when you try and like just speak with someone, it just sounds like you're speaking like gibberish. Like you could probably get away with speaking gibberish. So I think Dutch is kind of like a cringe choice. I mean, I love Dutch. I have a soft spot for the language, but I mean, just choosing Dutch as a language, we all know the real reason you chose Dutch. There's a language you were too wimp to learn. However, on the contrary, if you already learned German and decided to learn Dutch to unlearn German, then yeah, maybe I would put it higher, but I'm going to keep it in cringe. Okay, the next languages that I'll talk about, because I have a similar feeling about them, is Swedish and Norwegian. I would both put these in the basic tier. I know a lot of people who are learning Swedish and Norwegian probably think that they're pretty cool and quirky, and they are to some extent, but we all know why you're learning them. They're easy. But a lot of Swedish and Norwegian learners, MFs, think that it's going to be a complete cakewalk, but then they realize like 2 weeks in that the pronunciation is actually like a little difficult, especially for Swedish. And they're still not nailing those accents quite correctly because Swedish is sometimes a tonal language. And with Norwegian, even though they looked up that the grammar was easy, they're still getting tripped up by some tricky, goofy points in the language. Okay, and one Scandinavian language that you probably realized that I left out was Danish. And I think that if you're actually learning Danish, then yeah, you're above basic, because a lot of people don't even know that Danish exists. And people like to learn Scandinavian languages, and either they kind of exclude Danish or they say they speak Danish, but they really don't. Because Danish actually does have very hard pronunciation, and it does take a while to master because you have to roll a potato in your mouth, especially when you say, and also, with Danish, the written form of Danish is far different than how people actually speak Danish nowadays. And because it's hard to get resources for the language, it can be really hard to actually talk with native speakers. So if you're learning Danish and you're actually able to speak with people around you, I salute you. Okay, now we're gonna get to the actual Germanic language that you guys have probably all been thinking about. Luxembourgish. If you are learning Luxembourgish, then you realize that you can use your polyglot skills to the fullest potential. Luxembourgish was literally made out of a lab between French and German. And if you already know those languages or just know some Romance and Germanic languages, then you can learn this language in like 6 hours, go to Luxembourg, and shock all 300,000 natives. One day, me and Lang from Dawg, go subscribe, plan to learn this language and go shock every single native that exists and win a Guinness World Record. Okay, so obviously if you're learning Luxembourgish, it's cool that you even know that it's a language that exists and you are pretty enlightened. Okay, I'll stop procrastinating. German. Yeah, if you're learning German, I wouldn't say that's a basic choice. Yes, German is common to be taught, but a lot of people don't actually go through with it. A lot of people just know some German, but it's hard for them to continue with it, especially because of the grammar. So for those who are learning German and actually studying through it, I would say that you're pretty smart because a lot of people speak German and you'll have really good opportunities. Also, you're cool because German can be spoken in many different ways. There's Hochdeutsch, Plattdeutsch. There's German spoken in Switzerland and Austria, so you also have to manage that. So that's why I would say if you're learning German, you're pretty cool. Okay, let's go on to the next Germanic language, British. Okay, the final Germanic language that I'll be talking about in this video is American. And it's obvious where American is going to go. Ever since the American States of United formed and the Constitution was signed by George Washington, Ronald Reagan, and Obama, the American language has spread everywhere around the world, and for good reason. It has the simplest pronunciation, the simplest vowel changes, the simplest grammar rules, and is the most consistent language of all time, and is easy for anyone to learn. And chances are, if you are learning this language because everyone speaks it, you are very smart. So I'm not saying that if you grew up speaking this language that you are him, because you cheated. But if you are someone who, you didn't grow up speaking English, and you are actually studying the language and you're able to speak really well, then yes, of course, you are him. I have to give it to you because, in all seriousness, English is difficult. And yes, I can say that as a native speaker. I usually say that native speakers can't really speak on the difficulty of their language. But me, I do say I'm a native speaker of English, of course. But it was actually really hard for me to speak English growing up. And I kind of sort of had to teach myself how to speak the language. And I couldn't speak properly until I was like 12. So I understand difficulties with learning English. It's very complicated.
What's up, guys? Thank you so much for watching this video. I did actually do more languages for this tier list. I did Slavic languages and Asian languages. So if you would like to see languages like Russian, Polish, Chinese, Japanese ranked, then please make sure to subscribe to the channel. However, for now, I am going to go. Salut.